So a little further in, there was an administrative phase. Not a lot happened. The treasure cities didn't recuperate. But then, Macedonian turn. There was a Persian turn first, and they reinforced and grabbed more stuff. Treachery card played to aid in taking, what is this, Miletus? Something like that. Miletus. And, yeah, I don't know how to pronounce things, right? And Alexander moved forward and engaged Darius as well. He defeated Darius, not a complete rout. Darius was run back all the way here to Babylon. And that's kind of painful. He also lost some 20 strength points, whereas Alexander only lost, I think, 7. But we are seeing a decent amount of fatigue beginning to grow in the army, with the siege and that happening at the same time. Now comes an interesting situation, which is where Alexander probably will be chasing Darius in order to, have that big army pinned down. On the other hand, Antipater needs to come up and start working his way down the coast, I think. The problem with all of this is that if that's the case, Alexander's not going to be over in Egypt where he needs to be. And we need to build another army because there's a lot of stuff up in the north that needs to be captured as well. So it's kind of a tricky situation. You don't want to send out. You don't want to not have Alexander facing the main Persian army, though. So I think he's got to go eastward. I think it's hard to tell. All right, Alexander charged out of supply into Babylon, and Darius met him in the field there. Was defeated again. Not a major battle this time. 5 losses for Darius, 1 for Alexander. But because of the way the rules are, even though this was a minor skirmish, it ends up making Darius' army useless, which is bad. So he's withdrawn into Susa. At least he's reunited with his family. And that's about it there. The siege 1 point went. That should probably surrender, but there wasn't an extra movement point. The Macedonian player didn't choose to pay for that extra point. Got the Macedonian weariness. I think this one's going to go pretty quickly, and I think I don't really have the hang of how to stop Alexander yet. So some time has passed. Babylon finally fell. That's pretty much why I moved to recording this. And that again has dropped the Macedonian army's morale. Got a siege going on down here of Halicarnassus, and some troops were added to that force so that the Macedonians could get another leader so that they can start up that third army. They definitely wanted it in play at this point. Not a lot else has happened. Darius is back here trying to recover. He's got an action now. He may end up doing an administrative phase just so that he can get his army back to useful. Currently, he upped his strength points a bit. The Persian reserves are going down. Got himself another leader. But he's in a troubled situation. And one problem that I see with where Darius sits right now is he's got a limited number of cities that he can build troops in. And I think they're pretty much what he's got down here in the Persian homeland. I can look that up, but his other treasure cities over here are essentially undefended. So he's really got to get himself another army on the board. And as things stand right now, I believe Alexander is still, well, he's in supply now because he's got a treasure city, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He was just barely out of line of communication there, so he couldn't get any reinforcements the way he sat. Now he can start getting them, and that's very troubling as well, but there's only so much you can do about that. Anyway, trying to figure out what can be done at this point. I better look at the naval rules and see if there's a way to do something about Europe without, that doesn't help much either. I can just bring troops there. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do with the Persians at this point. Interesting development. The Persians got a couple of turns in a row, and they raised up a new army up here and pushed it down towards Babylon. They could not quite reach. They don't have supplies, so they couldn't push to 4 movement points. But they are definitely threatening Alexander's supply line. Now, he has to decide what the hell he's going to do. Supply isn't vital. In this game, he can operate out of supply just fine, for the most part. But he can't add troops, and he wouldn't be able to not sure what else. I mean, there's other things like movement, etc., that would be harder to do without the supplies. But it's really tough to decide that there's anything he should do about this. Certainly losing Babylon would suck, but he doesn't have troops nearby, and he's got this leader, so he could raise an army, I think, as far as Mesopotamia, actually, legally. Well, maybe not. It's probably got to be in supply. He might be able to raise it out of here, though, one which would be in Mesopotamia. He's got a trace going back from Mesopotamia all the way back to his capital, so I don't think there's any reason he can't do that. The only question would be, whether he can supply through this space, but I believe he can. So he may be raising an army. We got 2 Persian turns in a row, which means there's a guaranteed Macedonian turn after that. Well, some events led up to a very odd battle. What's his name down here? Spitamenes. He went and managed to eventually take Babylon and put a big stack of garrisons there, because it doesn't hurt how you can put as many garrisons as you like somewhere, well, up to the stacking limit, which in this case was 10, and it doesn't really cost you anything. Of course, it costs you garrison counters, but there are extra ones left. It doesn't give you a lot either, but it does make a city a little bit more resistant to a siege. So a city with just 1 or 2 garrisons in it is easily gives a bonus to the attacker. And it's not a big deal, but it's a small bonus. And it also makes it easier to just surrender straight up. So then he continued on to attack Parmenion. And we got an interesting battle. Now, the Macedonians had significantly larger force. It was like 23 to 13 or something along those lines. The die rolls worked out in the Macedonians' favor. They won the battle. That was a close run thing to begin with. There was a retreat and a long one, which really heavily affects the casualties taken, right? But because it was a smaller force, they only took 4 casualties. The Macedonians also managed to roll, and nobody's got supply, which is what's causing all this problem. Actually, I think there may be a... I have to check to see if things have become useless now. But they ended up losing 7, which was just below double. So they might have become a useless army. It was really pretty much a Pyrrhic victory, but for the Macedonians. But there's not much... I'm not sure why I built that army, to tell you the truth. I'm pulling this one over because I need the siege leader to finish things off more quickly. But it is an interesting situation. Alright, I'm starting a new day here, so I'm a little disoriented as to when I last videoed and stuff like that. Like I said, I like to take breaks in between my play. So things might seem a little odd right now, but, and too recent. Macedonians went, and they have moved Antipatris' army forward after that big battle, and Alexander's almost taken Susa by siege. He's lost a couple of units trying to do so. He played the Alexander's Drunken Binge card, which improved the weariness, reduced it, whatever, of the Macedonian army, but he killed Black Cletus. Now this is one of the kind of weird things. There's a couple of things in the game that you kind of have to put down on notes. There's a couple others that I can remember that I didn't write down, but that one I know is going to be a problem. One of them is this Rhodes fleet and this Greek fleet are owned by Macedon, and that's, they could be owned by either player. It's also possible that, and this is very true to history, that the Persian fleets that if you capture the city that a Persian fleet is home to, the fleet switches sides, and there's no counters for that. There's no back printing. On the back, they tell you what the home cities are for a fleet. You have to get them all. It's slightly annoying, just trying to remember that. It wouldn't be bad at all, I think, in a 2-player game, because you'd be sitting down playing for 2 to 3 hours, and how likely are you going to forget it during that time? But if you have to put breaks in, and if you play it the way I do, it does become a little more annoying. And if you have to walk away from the game, you may have to write down a couple notes. That's all.